Welcome to People, Power, and Politics. Hard talk, riveting interviews, community updates, in-depth analysis. That's People, Power, and Politics. We tell it to you as it is. No holds barred. You are the people, you have the power. We bring you the politics. To listen to our show, be a guest, or to advertise, visit www.pppradio.nyc. That's www.pppradio.nyc.
Very warm welcome to everyone. We are joined by a very special guest, Ms. Barbara Bullard, who is the President and CEO of the Shirley Chisholm Cultural Institute, SSCI. Welcome. Such a pleasure and honor to have you here with us today.
Well, it's a pleasure meeting you as well, and thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Ms. Bullard, can you share with us a brief introduction to the Shirley Chisholm Cultural Institute? What inspired you to start this organization?
Okay, the Shirley Chisholm Cultural Institute was started by Shirley Chisholm and the community in 1977. How I became involved, I've been working, and I think we've talked about it off the camera or off audio, that I've been working on Chisholm's legacy for over 2 decades. How I became involved is I started working on the portrait that's in Brooklyn Borough Hall, that's permanently installed of Shirley. And prior to that, I was even a part of another portrait that launched the Shirley Chisholm post office that's located in Bedford-Stuyvesant. There I met Bill Howard, which was Shirley's legislative aide, her confidant, chair of her finance committee. We can go on and on about Bill. And then I realized this one man was out there trying to make sure Shirley's legacy was remembered. And so in reference to the portrait that's in Brooklyn Borough Hall, it was a project that myself and the artist Al Johnson was picked for. They had done a search nationwide for an artist, and Al was picked. I worked with Al on art projects, and we began researching Shirley more. I knew about Shirley, and Al Johnson met Shirley when he was a teen, like 13 years old. He was the youngest court reporter artist for the Hurricane Carter trial, and we can talk about that on another show. So Shirley was there, and she showed up, and she wanted to know, why was this kid not in school? That was her first question. Fast forward decades later, he had a dream about her, painted her, and that piece became, again, a part of the launching of the Bedford-Stuyvesant post office. So fast forward again, we were chosen for the installation that's in Brooklyn Borough Hall, and started researching Shirley even more, opening a space in Bedford-Stuyvesant that was open for community members to come in and talk about Shirley while the painting was actually being created. So they saw Shirley coming to life in real time. Some people brought by images of Shirley, had stories about Shirley, and it helped actually to create the piece that you would see in Brooklyn Borough Hall. It became a part of the portrait. So the Shirley Chisholm Cultural Institute, Bill was still out there by himself talking about the Institute, and I realized this guy needs help. So I just kind of started chatting with Bill, and Bill's like, yeah, I need help. So we started joining forces and going out there into the community, talking about Shirley's legacy and asking people, do they know who Shirley Chisholm was? And basically we got a no, which was really shocking to me because I had known about her from school. And I realized no one's talking about this amazing woman. So Bill and I joined forces, working on Shirley for over 2 decades. And then Bill passed away in his sleep in 2018. And I realized that the Institute was possibly going to be erased because Shirley's legacy was basically erased. So I took it upon myself to bring the Institute back, and I try to resuscitate it, because the board members, most of them were already deceased by that time. There were 2 living board members, very, very up in age, one 104 years old. So I've been building the Institute back ever since to bring it back into not just 21st century activism, but beyond, because Shirley's legacy is way beyond even that.
Okay, thank you so very much for that. So, Ms. Bullard, as we celebrate Shirley Chisholm's centennial, can you share with us what her legacy means today, especially in the context of the ongoing global discussions at the United Nations?
Well, at the United Nations, I know one of their main focuses, of course, is the Sustainable Development Goals, which is inclusive of addressing poverty globally, inequality, climate change, health crises, and how I could see Shirley's legacy during this centennial being so powerful within the realm of the SDG goals is that, what she was fighting for 50 plus years ago, we're fighting for now. So, in reference to global health crisis, of course, she was a community person. She was an educator, first and foremost. And with those particular strengths that she had, she was an orator, she was a debater. Even before she became the first African American woman in Congress, she was already out there in the streets of Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn, and so many other areas fighting for our rights, fighting for our health issues that occur. And unfortunately, I can say being a resident of the community and a resident of the global community, we still have so many issues around health. And, even if we want to think about COVID and, and how it's affected us on the long term. If we look at Chisholm's legacy, she had presented so many legislations within Congress addressing the community issue, which is the global issue.
Yes, incidentally, I just did an interview with Congresswoman Yvette Clarke about the Uterine Cancer Study Act. Yes, so um, Shirley Chisholm was a boss woman. There's no doubt about that. So the event which you had on September the 19th brought together leaders from various sectors to honor her impact. How do you believe this gathering contributes to the current discourse on education and advocacy? And you did mention she was an educator.
Well, it was a powerful event. It was scheduled very well at the top of before the high official meetings at the United Nations occurred. So, therefore, we had members from all over the world at this event focusing on education and advocacy. We also had Dr. Rashid, excuse me, that is the professor in philosophy and education and issues of race, class, gender, sexuality, and social justice at Long Island University. And she also teaches at other universities as well in those issues. She actually spoke and was in conversation with Dr. I should say Dominic Register, who is the director of the Salzburg Global Seminar. And that was really a powerful conversation in the room because Dr. Shireen Rashid, she is a three-time Fulbright scholar that works on the issues of gender and race around the world. And Dominic Register, who is the director again of the Salzburg Global Seminar, works with education advocacy and more globally around the world. They have a location in DC, but their main location is located in Salzburg, Austria. On the actual land, which we call the Schloss, which is a mansion that was, what most people know in the U.S. is the mansion that was in the movie Sound of Music, right? So the property is huge, and global leaders come there around the world. So to be able to have education and advocacy leaders from around the world in all different ages and generations, I should say. We had, young people as young as 13 years old that flew in for the UN General Assembly to talk about the issues on education and advocacy through the lens of young people. So I believe that event was able to be a collaborative event to provide an opportunity for people that may not have known each other because they are from different parts of the world to be able to talk talk at that moment, to network, and to talk about issues, but also to look at ways that we can work together.
Okay, so Shirley Chisholm famously said, if they don't give you a seat at the table, bring a folding chair. How does her approach to inclusivity inspire your work at the Shirley Chisholm Institute today?
That's a great question. I would say that I've been working on Shirley Chisholm's legacy beyond the Institute for over 20 years. So, like 2 decades or more. And I find that her legacy is so much ingrained in who we are as a people, from a local, national, and global standpoint. In terms of my work, um, I think that to be unbought and unvoiced is super important. Mm-hmm. To know that our voices matter is super important. To know that, what we bring to the table is super important. And no matter if we're community leaders, or folks that are in Congress, or in art and culture and technology, our voices as a collective matters for the current and the present conditions that are happening here and around the world.
Okay, so with Vice President Kamala Harris's historic run for president, what parallels do you see between her candidacy and Shirley Chisholm's pioneering efforts in politics? And how do you think this influenced young leaders today?
Well, I feel that Vice President Kamala Harris's run, of course, she stands on the shoulders of Shirley, right?
Every woman of color does.
So that's kind of, the first part of it. Second of all, I would like to say that in reference to Vice President Kamala Harris's run, she is focused on, for instance, LBGT rights, which Shirley was. She was one of the first, maybe the first. I would definitely say one of the first, within even her run for president, that was at the forefront before anyone was even talking about it. And she was going on to college campuses, encouraging young people to understand what the electoral process is and to encourage them to vote. Because when Shirley ran for presidency, it was in 1972, which was the first year 18-year-olds were given even the right to vote. So she was basically the only one going out there on the college campuses talking to 18-year-olds, because that was the first year they were given the right to vote. I would say that in reference to Vice President Kamala Harris, she's going out to the college campuses. I mean, we see what she's doing with HBCUs and plus, right? And I think that that's a definite correlation. I think also the fact that Shirley was fighting for and was supporting voting rights legislations, right? And now, because our voting rights are questionable, and due to what's happening in the Supreme Court, and a lot of issues the clock again has been turned back. I believe that Vice President Kamala Harris is fighting for our rights to be heard, and also for our voting rights. Reproductive rights. Shirley was fighting for our reproductive rights 50 plus years ago. And that's definitely, from what I understand, one of the platforms that Vice President Kamala Harris is fighting for as well.
Okay, so she's been a trailblazer. Same thing she's been fighting for 50 years ago, still relevant today. Can you tell us more about the Hope Collective initiative launched in collaboration with the Salzburg Global Seminar, and what role do you see it playing in advancing Chisholm's vision of social justice?
Okay, that's a great question as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So, let's see, November of 2023, I was invited to Salzburg, Austria, on behalf, in celebration of Shirley's legacy, of course. There, I was in the room with so many people, like it was 20 organizations, 49 individuals from around the world. And I believe I was the only African American in the room. But Shirley's legacy, and I could thank the director, Dominic Register, for doing that. He actually brought her legacy to the forefront in a room of global leaders on education and belonging and identity, about Shirley and about, if your seat, bringing your seat to the table. And he actually produced a more of an exercise for the global leaders with a table, a literal table,
Wow.
in the room, where we would, sit at the table and talk about the issues that are happening in our countries or in our communities. And then we would also realize that our issues are similar, right? So bringing our seat to the table is super, super important. In reference to the Hope Collective, out of the Salzburg Global Seminar, we were like divided into different groups, and I ended up being in a group that the subject was hope.
Oh, wow.
Which was exciting. We were in a room with it was myself with three other individuals, one by way of Nicaragua, two from the UK. I was the only person in the US in the room, and they had also at that time were aware that I had came out with a book on called Release and Become, and that book became a part of the library, the permanent library in Salzburg. That book was in the room with us, and they started looking at it. And the book is on healing and releasing, and the voices through global leaders. From that, and through art and culture. So we started sitting down. What is hope? What is hope? And we started realizing that hope, is a seed that's planted, right? A seed that can grow, right? Hope is providing opportunities for people to see themselves in different spaces and be okay with that. So what we did was we came together and built through the several months, what can hope look like? And that's how the Hope Collective came out of. So what it is the next generation of leaders advocating for fair and just communities where everyone lives with a sense of compassion for themselves and others. How does that happen? We launched it in the UK, June of 2024, at a project called the Forest of Imagination at the Holborn Museum in Bath, UK, where one of the people that were a part of our group actually did a presentation of artwork with young people, and how do they feel through the artwork? What does it say to them? How does and out of that there was a conversation of how to be a community leader. What your thoughts matter. And so we're building this whole concept out, and our mission is to connect children and young people through conversation that fosters hope, empathy, and understanding that leads to a meaningful change. And because it came out of an education and advocacy lens, we are started to launch it around the world in other educational spaces, but not just educational, intergenerational spaces as well. So because we have like our seniors, sometimes they feel that they're not being heard. But through art and through this type of presentation that we've put together, they're able to talk about their issues, create pieces, and through the actual artwork, which the artist Al Johnson, who's known through back to Shirley, through Shirley's portrait that's permanently installed in Brooklyn Borough Hall. He's also an abstract expressionist artist. He actually lent his artwork so we can actually combine that into a presentation for young people and young at heart people to engage.
I like that, young and hard people. So, in your opinion, what are some key lessons from Shirley Chisholm's career that current and future leaders should embrace in their pursuit of equity and change?
Well, I think, again, to be fearless. And I know that may sound like a very generic statement, but if you look at the legacy of Chisholm, one of the things that I say among my board members and also the community, and we laugh about it, we have these Chisholm moments. Everybody has a Chisholm moment. And the question is, what would Chisholm do? Because she was able to work with people also on a bipartisan level, so they may not believe in everything that she believes in, but she was a great negotiator, and she was a great listener, and listening to the community as well, and to be able to take those thoughts and the thoughts of different people, and to be able to see how can we work together.
That's very important. So As we look ahead, Ms. Bullard, what are your hopes for the future of the Institute, and how do you plan to continue Ms. Chisholm's legacy in empowering underrepresented communities?
Well, I think that through the Institute, one of our goals is to understand from a local, national, and global perspective how what's the thread, between our communities, and there's so many threads, right? And to be able to identify those threads through programming, like for instance, we're creating projects all over the world through Chisholm's legacy. Going back to bringing your seat to the table in London, an intergenerational organization in London is actually, I'm sorry, excuse me, Liverpool, let me be correct, in Liverpool is creating and has created a Bring Your Seat to the Table project that we're collaborating with, whereas they're bringing in artisans that are building chairs. What does that mean? Well, basically, the chairs are being built by artisans, but with seniors and young people. And through building their chairs, they're talking to them at the same time of what's happening in your community. What are your needs? Integrating other institutions within the community to be partners in this conversation. So the Institute is really looking for partners. We've been doing projects, for instance, on Sunday, we partnered with Prospect Park Alliance, and we developed a program in terms of building your own capes. You're your superhero, because a lot of people look at Shirley as a superhero, and yeah, okay, but we're superheroes too. And I believe that Shirley saw us as superheroes, even though we may not have identified ourselves as one. Right. So we collaborated on Sunday, and it was cross-generational. It was intergenerational, I should say, and it was amazing. We donated fabric and other items for these pieces to be created. A little fashion show happened. It was more than a little fashion. It was pretty cool. Happened on the grounds of the Leffert House, which is at Prospect Park. This coming Sunday, we are collaborating with the Shirley Chisholm State Park. We're producing a health and wellness walk with one of our board members, Miko Branch, who is the co-founder and CEO of Miss Jessie's, the hair product. She will be coming out talking about mental health, wellness, talking about entrepreneurship while we're walking for 45 minutes throughout the Shirley Chisholm State Park. And it's in celebration of Shirley's 100th, but also is in celebration of the New York State Park's 100th birthday. So there's many other projects I can tell you about, but that kind of gives you an idea of what we're doing through a community lens, but also through a global lens as well.
Okay, because my next question was for you to share upcoming events and also how our audience can learn more about the Institute and contact you.
Sure. Well, there's more events than that. I didn't want to keep going, but we're building a partnership also with Barbados, Bridgetown, Barbados, in celebration of Shirley's legacy. We're really excited about that. That's ongoing, so I'll keep you posted on that, because the goal is to be able to be inclusive of what's happening here locally, but also what's happening in Barbados and how we can work together. So that gives you another idea of how we're extending it, and to be able to create panel discussions after the election on what do we do as community members, right? What do we do in our own roles, within society? We'll be partnering with the campaign school at Yale University. So we'll be letting you know when that will be kicking off. And there'll be further other projects as well. But we're looking through the lens of art, culture, social justice, to be able to highlight Miss Chisholm's legacy, to be able to show her legacy more, because a lot of people think only one way about Chisholm, one thing about Chisholm, right? But there's so much of Chisholm. Shirley Chisholm's legacy is endless. She was a visionary. She was way before her time. So what the Institute is hoping to do is to be able to kind of provide a space for you and everyone else to engage with her legacy and understand that it's ongoing.
Okay. And how can one contact you if they want to learn more about the SSCI?
Sure. So you can go to shirleychisholminstitute.org. That's shirleychisholminstitute.org. We have a fun website. It's always, like Shirley, it's always evolving. We're on social media. We love IG and TikTok. We're everywhere. So even if you have ideas about Shirley, or you knew Shirley, or you had a relative that gave you or talked to you about Shirley herself, we're really looking for that as well, because we'll be documenting oral history on Shirley, which we feel is extremely important. So really creating a time capsule of her legacy, so generations in the future, current generations and generations in the future, can have access to her vision.
How can one support the Shirley Chisholm Cultural Institute?
The best way you can support the Shirley Chisholm Cultural Institute is to donate, or even donate your time as a volunteer. And you can go onto our website, shirleychisholmculturalinstitute.org, and there's a donate button, and there's also contact information to reach out to us.
All right. Thank you so much, Ms. Bullard, for being here and sharing such great information with us.
Thank you for having me.
Our pleasure.
People, power, and politics. Hard talk, riveting interviews, community updates, in-depth analysis. That's people, power, and politics. We tell it to you as it is. No holds barred. You are the people, you have the power. We bring you the politics. To listen to our show, be a guest, or to advertise, visit www.pppradio.nyc. That's www.pppradio.nyc.